It's time we talk about something important. GGG just introduced another intricate build mechanic with very little explanation. Outside of a short demo during the Return of the Ancients reveal stream, most of what we know about this mechanic has come from player discovery in-game. The mechanic in question is Runic Ward. That's the beauty of this game, right? In PoE, you discover a new mechanic or interaction that comes together to turn your character into a force of doom and destruction. But it's hard to include that mechanic in your build if you don't know much about it. Today, I'm going to help you understand this mechanic so that you can use it to your advantage. I'm going to go over what Runic Ward is, how we can use it to bolster both your offense and defense, how to scale it, and some of my thoughts and predictions on the future of this mechanic. Buckle up, ladies and gentlemen, this is going to be a good one. For those of you that don't know, Runic Ward is actually a concept that comes from POE1. Ward works very differently in POE2's predecessor. In POE1, the Ward mechanic is mainly a defensive layer that works on top of life and energy shield. Ward can only be found on item bases and uniques related to the Expedition mechanic and King's March. Once you equip items that contain Ward, your Ward pool will be noted by a golden ring around your health bar. In POE1, your Ward pool cannot be depleted partially. It is either unbroken or broken. Ward breaks on a single hit. The damage you receive subtracts the value from your ward first and then applies any remaining damage to your life and energy shield. So let's say we take a 3k hit from an enemy with 800 ward. The damage applied to your life and energy shield and potentially mana after the ward breaks will be 2200. Ward has no effect on damage over time, and broken ward is restored after a 2-second delay. Outside of a few select examples, most builds that utilize ward in PoE1 used it for ward stacking as a large defensive pool or ward looping setups that would trigger skills after the ward breaks. Not only are the ward items in PoE1 ugly as hell in my opinion, ward has a much more limited use in that game than it does in PoE2. Similar to PoE1, ward's primary function is to act as a defensive layer along with life and energy shield. Unlike PoE1, ward sits below life and protects you from dying once your life drops to 0. Mechanically, you can think of this as energy shield in reverse. Despite it being a shield that absorbs damage after your life pool, it does not make your character immortal. If the damage you receive to your life and ward exceeds both of these values added together, you still kick the bucket. In PoE2, the ward mechanic is tied directly to Expedition, King's March, and the Calgurans. Acquiring ward is not restricted to select equipment bases in PoE2. Ward can be acquired on almost every armor piece in the game. In order to obtain Runic Ward on an armor piece, we need to first place it in the new Verisium Anvil crafting bin with a set amount of Verisium artifacts from the altered Expedition mechanic. Once we hit craft, we will obtain a Runeforge base type of the original item that was placed in the anvil. As you can see, this item now has Runic Ward. What you may not have noticed is that some of the original base values on the armor also changed once it was Runeforged. The Runic Ward added, as well as some of the base values sacrificed, all depend on what equipment item you are runeforging in the anvil. The effects of runeforging and the application of Runic Ward pertains to unique equipment as well. For unique armor, most of the same rules that we apply to non-unique gear remain the same, but there are exceptions to these rules when using specific unique armor pieces. When we reforge something like the brass dome, instead of removing some of the base armor and replacing a portion of it with Runic Ward, the armor is removed completely and a large pool of Runic Ward is put in its place. These special outcomes are linked to uniques that are classified as either Ezomite or Calguran in origin. Other examples include Fallen, Duality, Mjolnir, and many more. Now that we've gone over what Ward is in both PoE1 and 2 and how we obtain it, let's talk about ways we can use it defensively. As I mentioned in the previous section, Ward innately is a defensive mechanic. It's that extra layer that can safeguard you from an untimely death. Strengthening our defensive ward is achieved in a few different ways. These methods are ward stacking, increasing our ward regeneration rate, and bolstering other defensive layers using our available Runic Ward. I know what you might be thinking. Well, duh, these are obvious. Bigger ward, faster ward regen equals more defense. The reason I bring these up is to reinforce these ideas in your head. Runic Ward is obtained in a slightly non-conventional way when compared to the other defensive layers. Improving these three metrics require extra thought, attention, and planning. I mentioned Brass Dome earlier, and its large ward pool when Runeforged. Some characters will have the strength to take advantage of this unique body armor, while others do not. If a character doesn't have the strength required to equip Brass Dome, they will be forced into a situation where you would have to find other ways of getting your ward as high as possible. We may choose to use runes that increase our Runic Ward, or another item that requires less strength like Fallen for improving our ward regeneration regeneration rate. We can use some of the new runes to socket into our equipment, but on the other hand, we may need some of these augment sockets to improve other areas of our build, like resistances, movement speed, or something similar. An alternative solution to the regeneration rate problem may prompt us to use something like Olroth's Resolve. This unique flask completely solves our regen problem and gives us guard. In terms of bolstering our other defenses using Ward, we can use something like these runes here. As you can see, developing a strong defensive layer using Ward requires a bit of creativity. With all this talk about defense, we can't forget about the other side of build making in Path of Exile. As some say, the best defense is a good offense. In the next section, we'll discuss how we can use Ward offensively. Unlike POE1, where Ward is mainly used for defense, in POE2, the offensive power of Ward has expanded to a whole other level. We can use Runic Ward to add damage to our skills using our maximum available ward to scale up the damage, penetrate elemental resistances when our ward is at a certain amount, and even use our Runic Ward to break enemies' armor. One of the biggest additions to the ward mechanic is the inclusion of the brand new Kalguran skills. Kalguran skills come in many different forms, but all of them use Runic Ward as a resource that we spend to use these specialized skills. These skills have a number of possible applications. Some can be used as active skills for pure offense, like Grim Pillars. Grim Pillars is a skill that spends Runic Ward to make ice pillars erupt from the ground. A follow-up effect to this skill is an icy explosion from the lingering ice crystals. We also have offensive tech that act more like supportive additions to these tools that we already have in the game. Take for example, we use either the skills Repulsion or Explosive Transmutation. Repulsion is a curse that targets an area with a Verisium rune. Enemies targeted gain a debuff called Fragility. When we hit these cursed enemies, we trigger an explosion of physical damage that originates from the cursed target. Because this is a curse, we can combine this with something like Blasphemy. When socketed into Blasphemy, we extend the range of Repulsion to a 360-degree AoE. This allows for us to curse a large crowd of enemies all at once that can trigger many large explosions from the cursed enemies. Now as for Explosive Transmutation, this is a persistent skill that requires 30 spirit. While this skill is active, picking up remnants will trigger an explosion based on the type of remnant that was consumed. There's an explosion for every element, including chaos. With remnants being a large part of increasing the damage of many of the elemental spell skills, this skill can be enabled in many different ways. For example, when combining this with elemental infusion generators like Frost Bomb, Orb of Storms, and Living Bomb, we can generate many elemental explosions. One very powerful interaction involving this skill happens when we use it as an Acolyte of Chayula. The Acolyte of Chayula possesses the node Into the Breach. With this node, we are able to spawn one of 3 select flames of Chayula. When we have the purple Chayula flame selected with Explosive Transmutation active, the Chalupa monk turns into a constant explosion machine. These are just a few of the examples of the ways that we can use these new skills to enhance our offensive capabilities. In the next section, we'll discuss how I think the Runic Ward mechanic will develop in the future with some potential interactions. Now, let's talk about the future potential of the Runic Ward mechanic. With a mechanic that has just been introduced into POE2, Runic Ward still has much more room to grow in the current sandbox. As I see it, I believe the future changes to Ward will be the following. Kalguran skills will be expanded upon to contain more skills and more skill interactions. Next, I believe the defensive capabilities of Runic Ward will be improved, something akin to how we scale current energy shield. Finally, I think we will receive more unique Runeforge outcomes like that of Brass Dome and Eventide Petals. Here, I'll go over some of my ideas that I would like to see implemented, along with some examples of how GGG can implement them into the game. As the game is now, we are currently missing some weapon classes. This means that by default, we are missing skills associated with those weapon classes. As those weapons are introduced into the game, we are bound to gain more Kalguran skills that are directly linked to those weapon classes. Imagine the skill Splitting Steel from POE1. This skill fires a projectile at an enemy and then splits on impact to deal area damage to the enemies around. This skill in POE1 is tied to swords, so that will most likely stay the same in POE2. I believe this kind of skill will be a perfect candidate for a Kalguran equivalent. I can see it being something more like firing shards of ice and impale an enemy, raining impale stacks on that enemy, and then dropping ice fragments when the enemy dies or we reach a certain amount of impale stacks. You might be thinking, what is Impale? Well, it's a mechanic in the game that you probably never used. Don't worry, we're going to have a guide coming out on that very soon. Next, I want to go over some of the ways that I think Ward's defensive power will be expanded in the future. The obvious changes will be some additions to the passive tree. I can see us having nodes and clusters of Ward passive points that mimic Energy Shield in a way. Some with percentage increases to Ward, to our maximum Runic Ward, others with Ward regeneration rate, and the like. Second to that, I think we'll be given tools to change our Ward and add it to our other defensive layers. In POE2, we already have ways to convert our Energy Shield to mana and vice versa. I believe a future upgrade for the Runic Ward mechanic is going to give us players a way to convert our Runic Ward to Energy Shield, mana, or both. Think of something like the Eldritch Battery Keystone or this modifier right here on the Everlasting Gaze unique amulet. Another prediction I have for the future of Runic Ward is the addition of more unique Runeforge outcomes. You may remember earlier in the video, I mentioned certain unique equipment possessing the ability to gain special Runeforge outcomes. The best example being something like Brass Dome, which replaces the armor value on the chest piece with a large pool of Runic Ward. I envision another outcome like this with a pure evasion or pure energy shield base. This would give us alternatives to the Brass Dome for characters not really building strength. I believe these will also come with altered affixes that closely relate to the base types as well. For example, one component of energy shield is having regeneration rate either higher or faster. So if we were to take a unique energy shield base body armor, once Runeforged, a unique outcome or change to the affix could be giving us Runic Ward regeneration mod tacked onto the body armor. Another unique Runeforge change I predict coming to the game in the future is altering implicit skills after Runeforging. Let's take something like the Auspix chest piece. This chest piece comes with an implicit skill built into the armor. The skill in the body armor summons a Mist Raven companion with Culling Strike. Now imagine this chest piece or another one Runeforged with a similar skill that is themed around the Kalgurans, potentially summoning some gross squid monster with ice powers, like the remnant monsters that we encounter in the expedition. Right now, these special unique outcomes are tied to only some of the unique items in the game that are specifically Ezomite and Kalguran. I anticipate in the future, other unique items outside of these categories will receive similar treatment when it comes to unique rune forging. Even though Runic Ward is a fairly new mechanic in POE2, I believe that this will be a cornerstone mechanic in the future as the game evolves. Lastly, let's go over all the things we discussed in this video. In this video, we discuss the origins of the Ward mechanic, its strengths, how to use it for both offense and defense, as well as its potential future as a more dominant mechanic in POE2. I'll admit, I was not a huge fan of the mechanic as it was in POE1, but its implementation in POE2 has changed my feelings drastically. In my opinion, it has gone from something very niche to something with much more variance and power. As we approach 1.0 and the full release of POE2, it's exciting to think about how mechanics like this will change and improve as time goes on. If you enjoyed this video, go ahead and drop your boy a like. That shit is free, by the way. Expect more guides on the league mechanics and some of the more intricate mechanics of POE2 in the near future. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the POE2 content. Thanks again for watching, and I'll catch y'all on the next one.